I always love it when you see reports come out from anonymous executives making claims or predictions about various trade scenarios, what they're hearing in terms of which players could be on the move, because of course, you never know if in fact it's actually real since the source is always anonymous, and even if the report is real, there is a reason they are wanting to stay anonymous because it's most likely just an executive or executives trying to stir the pot to increase or decrease a player's trade value that they're either going after themselves or a player on their own team that they're trying to move. So when I saw this latest one from NBA Central on Twitter that NBA executives envision a scenario in which the Lakers are going to trade Anthony Davis for Zach LaVine, I had to talk about it because although as hilarious and ridiculous this would be for the Bulls to make that kind of trade, and I also don't believe this to be true for a second after the Bulls just signed LaVine to a 5-year max contract and have continued to emphasize their focus on building around Zach, it still got me thinking, what would be the most that the Bulls should be willing to trade for Anthony Davis if the opportunity presented itself, especially while his trade value is rather low. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about first and foremost why the Bulls under no circumstances would trade Zach LaVine for Anthony Davis, and the Lakers are likely just going to have to stick with AD until his contract ends, but also what would a trade scenario look like in which it would make sense for the Bulls to actually pull the trigger on this. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, Anthony Davis being linked to the Chicago Bulls has been nothing new, really even dating all the way back to when he was with the Pelicans, mainly due to the fact that AD is from Chicago, and naturally any Chicago native player is going to have some ties and potentially wanting to play for the Bulls in the future. And a few years back, before Anthony Davis re-signed with the Lakers, when he was asked about wanting to come play for Chicago, he did not rule it out and said he was going to be a free agent next year, which of course players say that and it usually doesn't mean anything, which in this instance it didn't, since AD signed a max contract with the Lakers the following offseason after making those comments. But ever since things in LA have started going a bit south after getting bounced in the first round of the playoffs following the bubble to then missing the playoffs entirely last season, including the play-in, and because Anthony Davis has not been able to stay healthy, even when he was on the court, he really didn't look like a superstar level player that they gave a max contract to. Because of all of this, there has been speculation that the Lakers could look to move him in a trade before his value potentially goes even lower if, yet again, he injures himself or starts showing signs of decline. For me, the biggest question is, would they even be able to find a trade partner who would be willing to take on Anthony Davis's contract? Now, you saw the headline I showed earlier, reports that an executive envisions a scenario where the Bulls would trade Zach LaVine for Anthony Davis, which, let me be clear, that article came from Lakers Daily, and it was such a brief article that it makes you even wonder how outlets like this stay in business. But essentially, the executive, who again shall remain anonymous, was saying that this would be a scenario in which both players would go to a city where they would want to be. Anthony Davis being from Chicago and Zach LaVine, although not from LA, he did go to college there and lives there in the off season. But that aside, there is no basis or merit to these claims, especially when Zach LaVine has emphasized his desire for wanting to stay in Chicago and how Chicago is his home, and also the fact that he didn't even take a single meeting with any other team when he was a free agent. So this whole narrative that LaVine wants to be in LA is just nonsense at this point. But all that aside even, there is absolutely not a chance in hell where the Bulls would trade Zach LaVine for Anthony Davis. Not in a straight deal anyway. The trade could work straight up given LaVine is now on a max contract, so salary-wise, the money would work for a straight up trade between these two players. But look, for the Bulls, as much skepticism there has been around Zach, whether or not he can be that guy, the number one option on a contending team, whether he can really raise his game to be a superstar level player, for all the questions around his defense, for all the questions around his decision making on the court in late game situations, the fact of the matter is, availability is so important in this league. It trumps everything else because you can have a superstar level player on your roster who has all the skills you need, fits perfectly on your team, but if he's not available to play, is injured all the time, sits out most of the season, the guy is no longer as valuable in contributing to winning for the team any more than just any other role player who actually is able to be out on the court and be productive. And Zach LaVine, yes, some injury concerns, wasn't available at the end of last season, but he's certainly more durable than someone like Anthony Davis. So as intriguing as a Davis for LaVine swap would be, because both players at their best and fully healthy, which actually would provide some pretty big needs for the teams that they would be traded to, it just wouldn't happen simply due to the fact that the Bulls have stressed the importance of continuity, keeping their core together, and all of the moves that they made last offseason, as well as when they traded for Vucevic at the prior trade deadline, were done with the intention to keep Zach. And they just signed him to a 5-year max deal. Why would they do all of that to then just trade him for a player who is going to be turning 30 this upcoming season, who hasn't been able to stay healthy, and is still going to be making $40 million for the next 3 seasons? Don't get me wrong, Anthony Davis, when healthy, is a better player than Zach LaVine. I'm sure some will torch me in the comments for making that claim, but if you're going to be objective and take off the biased lens, when Anthony Davis is healthy, he is an all-around better player than Zach LaVine. AD is arguably one of the best two-way players in the game, if not the best, again, when healthy. He's an 8-time All-Star, a 4-time All-NBA player, a 4-time defensive team player, led the league in block shots for 3 seasons. Obviously, he was the #1 recruit coming out of high school in 2011, the #1 overall pick in 2012. He is a generational talent, there is no question about it. But again, I will take a fully healthy Zach LaVine over an Anthony Davis who is going to play maybe 50% of the season. That's really an easy choice. All that being said though, Anthony Davis, again, when healthy, is a top 10 player in the league. He's one of the best two-way players in the league. He would be a huge need in terms of what the Bulls are missing on this roster with his size, defense, rim protection, as well as scoring. Even last season, which was a down year for him, and granted, he only played 40 games, still more than Lonzo though. He averaged 23.2 points per game, near 10 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 2.3 blocks, 1.2 steals on 53% shooting, still one of the highest PERs in the league. His three-point shooting was atrocious, only shot 18%. But then again, Anthony Davis has never really been known for his three-point shooting, so yes, that would be a downside because the Bulls need shooting, but everything else that's needed, AD provides, again, assuming that he's healthy. So what would be a fair trade? Actually, scratch that. What would be a trade that would be too enticing for the Bulls to turn down, where you would be buying very low on Anthony Davis, taking a gamble on his health, but to where it would be a high-risk, high-reward opportunity? Now, the biggest issue in actually making a trade for AD work is matching his salary. Anthony Davis is set to make $38 million for this upcoming season, so to even make a trade possible, the Bulls would have to at least give up one of their big three in DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, or Nikola Vucevic. And in this instance, because it would not be a wise decision to include DeMar or Zach given AD's trade value and how low it is, and the Lakers don't really have a ton of leverage to turn either of these guys for Anthony Davis at this point, we're going to include Vucevic, which, yes, is tough because you guys probably know by now, I still like Vuce. I think he gets way too much unfair criticism from Bulls fans for how he performed last season, not excusing his play because he did underperform, and the Bulls really could have been one of the top teams in the East had he played like he did the year prior, where he was shooting threes at near 40%, but a new role, being a third option, he wasn't used effectively at times, in my opinion, so giving up Vuce isn't easy, especially when he's actually been available, unlike Anthony Davis. But you can't just trade Vucevic for AD. You do have to add other pieces to make the money work. So you would also need to include Coby White, who's really been the biggest trade chip for the Bulls, and a guy likely on the move given his fit on the roster, especially after the emergence of Dosunmu, the fact that he's also going to be a restricted free agent. Just Coby and Vuce, though, still would not cut it. So we're also going to include Derrick Jones Jr. and Tony Bradley. I know some will say, I am out of my mind to think the Lakers would ever go for this if that's the package for Anthony Davis. Like, you're not even going to throw in the first-round pick from Portland, and that's kind of the point. This is the most the Bulls should be willing to trade for Anthony Davis when his value is so low. Anything more than this is not worth it, in my opinion. If you add a first-round pick, no, it's a pass. If you have to include Patrick Williams, no, it's a pass. If you have to include one of DeMar or Zach, absolutely not, hard pass. Because this is a high-risk move the Bulls will be taking in bringing in Anthony Davis. It certainly could pay off for them because he is a superstar-level talent when he's at his best. But can you be sure that you're going to get that from him when he's going to be 30 years old and doesn't have the best track record of even staying healthy in his 20s? And not only that, but he still has 3 years left on his deal, which locks you up in terms of salary cap flexibility when you have guys like Vucevic, Coby, and Tony Bradley, who are all in expiring contracts, and Derrick Jones Jr. potentially as well, given his second year is a player option. So yes, I get it. It's Anthony Davis. He's likely going to be able to fetch you more from other teams if you're the Lakers, but this would be a big gamble, and you have to use your leverage by making a lowball offer and seeing if they bite. So the package is Vucevic, Coby White, Derrick Jones Jr., and Tony Bradley, more for just salary filler purposes. All of that for Anthony Davis. The Bulls get one of the best two-way players in the game, but injury prone. And for the Lakers, I mean, this isn't a trash deal. It's not the best, and they would definitely be the losers of this trade, but they're still getting a top 10 center in the league in Nikola Vucevic and a younger shooter in Coby White, who still has some upside. For a team who was one of the worst offensive teams in the league last year, I believe they were 22nd, to get 2 solid scorers and a big that is one of the best rebounders in the game, like, yeah, they're still getting something out of this trade. It's not like this is just a salary dump for Anthony Davis. Anyway, those are the only circumstances in which I would be okay with the Bulls trading for Anthony Davis. At the end of the day, I don't see the Bulls making a move for him regardless, but I want to know what's the most you would be willing to trade for AD. Remember, got to make the money work with Davis's salary. Let me know in the comments, and as always, guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.